For listeners who are blind, have low vision, or have another print disability, which makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org.
Hello, this is Margaret Mack, and for the next hour I'll be reading from the December 31st issue of the Batavia Daily News on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. And the front page article is by Mike Pettinella. Storm outages linger. National Grid distributes dry ice, bottled water. With thousands of customers continuing to be without electricity, a handful of National Grid employees traveled to Batavia on Tuesday afternoon to distribute dry ice and bottled water to those in need. As in the past, the City of Batavia Fire Department served as the distribution center for the initiative, which is mandated by New York state law. Batavia is centrally located where people have the ability to get off the thruway and get over here real quick, said Ken Kajawa, of Buffalo, a Niagara Grid regional director. Kajawa said the utility set up 3 locations on Tuesday, with the cities of Buffalo and Niagara Falls being the others. From 1 to 5 p.m., National Grid personnel met residents who pulled their vehicles behind the fire department on Evans Street and filled their requests for dry ice and/or bottled water. Customers that are out of power have the opportunity to come down and get a free 10-pound bag of dry ice, and they can get bottled water as well, Kajawa said. When we have a storm event like the one that we had yesterday, Monday, and if we have the expectation that restoration may last 48 hours or longer, then we're required by state law to establish dry ice and bottled water distribution for customers who are out of power. Yesterday, we made the decision that we were going to err on the side of caution to make sure that we have dry ice and bottled water available. And that's what brings us here today. Challenging time. Kajawa said all utilities in New York State are required to provide dry ice and bottled water when an emergency situation arises. Kajawa reported that as of 1 p.m. Tuesday, 2,575 customers of National Grid's Genesee region, which consists of Genesee, Orleans, Monroe, Livingston, Wyoming, and Ontario counties, were without electricity. Calling it a challenging time, Kajawa said that the utility is doing everything that we can to restore power as quickly and as safely as possible. The dry ice and bottled water is one small step in the process, but it's an opportunity for customers who are concerned about keeping their food cold that's in their freezer and their fridge. This is an opportunity for us to provide some help for them. National Grid secured 4,000 pounds of dry ice and 2 pallets of water for distribution in Batavia. When a customer comes to get the dry ice, we give them safety instructions on how to handle it, what they should and shouldn't do with the dry ice, because it is dangerous substance, Kajawa said. But it does help get you through a couple hours of an event where you're without power and want to keep your food fresh. On a broader scale, Kajawa said National Grid personnel took a proactive approach to this latest winter storm. We knew that this wind event was going to hit western New York on Monday, he said. We had made preparations in the weekend leading up to yesterday. We had brought 500 additional personnel into western New York. We staged them here in the area on Sunday night and into Monday so that when the outages started to hit yesterday, we were able to hit the ground running and get customers back as quickly as possible. The challenge was that the winds were so strong. We received word that the wind speed at the Buffalo International Airport was 80 miles an hour. It did a lot of damage to our system, broken poles, conductors down, trees bringing down our facilities. Kajawa urged customers to be patient, knowing that crews are working as fast as they can to restore power across the region. At 3 p.m., National Grid was reporting 1,764 customers without power in the Glow region. Genesee County with 885 customers and Orleans County with 789 customers were the areas that remained most affected. Wyoming County reported 77 customers without power, and there were 13 customers without power in Livingston County, according to the utilities outage map. An additional 34 RG&E customers in Wyoming County and 2 New York State electric and gas customers in Wyoming County were without power at 3 p.m. There were 13 New York State electric and gas customers in Steuben County without power at that time. By 6 p.m., National Grid had reduced its Glow region outages to less than 500 customers, 265 in Orleans, 112 in Genesee, and 77 in Wyoming. And in New York State Electric and Gas and RG&E, and there were 491 total customers still without power in the Glow region as of 6 p.m., including 39 in Wyoming and 1 in Livingston. Winter weather advisories continue. Winter weather advisories will extend into early Thursday morning for 3 of the 4 Glow region counties, while Wyoming County remains under the winter storm warning until early Friday morning. Genesee and Orleans counties are under a winter weather advisory until 1 a.m. Thursday. Snow accumulations of 3 to 5 inches are expected today in the most persistent lake snows, with an additional 2 to 4 inches expected Wednesday afternoon and evening, according to the National Weather Service. Winds will gust as high as 45 miles an hour. Roads, and especially bridges and overpasses, will likely become slick and hazardous. The advisory also includes Niagara and Monroe counties. Livingston County under a separate winter weather advisory from 7 a.m. Wednesday until 1 a.m. Thursday. The advisory also includes Ontario County. Total snow accumulations of 3 to 5 inches are expected in the most persistent lake snows. Travel will be difficult. The hazardous conditions will affect the Wednesday morning and evening commutes. Wyoming County remains under a winter storm warning until 1 a.m. Friday. Heavy snow is expected with total snow accumulations of 1 to 3 feet. The warning also includes Chautauqua, Cattaraugus, and southern Erie counties. Whiteout conditions are expected to continue tonight into Wednesday and will make travel treacherous. Travel will remain very difficult with hazardous conditions from lake effect snow continuing to affect travel through the week. Lake effect snow is expected to oscillate back and forth north to east of Lake Erie tonight into Wednesday. Forecast snowfall amounts could be much higher where lake bands persist during this long duration event. During lake effect snow, the weather can vary from bands of locally heavy snow with greatly reduced visibility to dry conditions just a few miles away. Be prepared for rapid changes in weather, visibility, and road conditions. If traveling, be prepared for rapid changing road conditions and visibility. And the next front page article is written by Dan Foltz. Conservancy acquires new preserve in York. The Little Italy Nature Preserve provides green space for wildlife and recreation. This is part 1 of a 3-part series about the Little Italy Nature Preserve in the town of York. Friday's installment will be about the history of the Little Italy Nature Preserve. After a years-long effort to preserve a nearly 70-acre tract of forest and wetland across from York Central Schools, former science teacher and local land preservation advocate Davies Nagel will finally get his wish to preserve the land forever. Made possible by a generous donation from the Frank DeMami Foundation of West Palm Beach, Florida, as well as York resident Mark Occhini and Nagel himself. This plot of land and its history will now be protected by the Genesee Valley Conservancy. The first hurdle was the cost of to transfer the property, which amounted to $51,000. Nagel appealed to the town of York to pay for the cost in a February guest essay in the LCN, but that amount was recently covered by the Domino Foundation. The transfer of the property was completed in June. In addition to the transfer costs, the Frank Domino Foundation has pledged $200,000 in matching funds toward the stewardship needs of Little Italy Nature Preserve. This generous gift is contingent upon $200,000 in local contributions, said the Genesee Valley Conservancy in a press release. For every dollar donated through the end of 2025, they will match it 100%. I think the other important piece to notice here is that we are doing this without absolutely any tax money. There is no burden at all to the York taxpayer from this, and we don't expect a single dime from the town of York either, said John Ruffino, Development Director for the Genesee Valley Conservancy. The donors. In addition to the large commitment from the Frank Domino Foundation, the owner of the 2 plots that have been combined to form the Little Italy Nature Preserve also made significant personal contributions, both in time and money. Occhini and Nagel's properties were assessed at $205,000 according to the Conservancy. I donated 10 acres, but Mark donated 55, said Nagel. Recently, the Little Italy Nature Preserve has faced strong development pressure from nearby commercial, agricultural, and residential users, said Ben Kajewski, Executive Director of the Genesee Valley Conservancy. Most notably was the York Travel Center, located next door at the intersection of Route 63 and 36, which opened in 2024. About half of the 11-acre plot is now paved, creating a parking club for weary tractor-trailer drivers who are charged $15 per day to stay in the large parking lot. Occhini and Nagel wanted to prevent further encroachment on the nature reserve resources of the area, as well as maintaining the historical connection. The preserve is named for a former town called Little Italy, where Italian immigrants worked in the Retzoff International Salt Company mine, built houses on a small settlement. Many of the house foundations from the settlement are still in place and visible to visitors. The most responsible use of this land is to have the Genesee Valley Conservancy continue my tradition of welcoming everyone to visit the former town that our immigrant ancestors built, admire the community they made, and cherish these foundations for generations to come, said Occhini in the statement provided by the Conservancy. We're so grateful for their ownership and the pride they have had in it, said Rigatino. I did it just because it's sort of like, what do you want to do with your life? Do you want to make as much money as possible? And then what's the end product, said Nagel. It seems what you can give back might be much more valuable than what you can take in, said Nagel. The landscape. The hiking trail in the Little Italy Nature Preserve is about 2 miles long and connects the Grooveland Secondary Trail and Genesee Valley Greenway, bringing together hiking, biking, and horseback riding opportunities from 22 miles away in East Bethany to the Greenway, which stretches 90 miles from the village of Cuba to Allegheny County to Rochester's Genesee Valley Park. The forest is mature with some wetlands, and Bidwell Creek, York's largest tributary to the Genesee River, flows through the middle. We're surveying plants, we're documenting that, and coming up with our stewardship plan, said Rigatoni, about the Conservancy's next step. That's basically just 1 year to say, okay, what is the next 20 years look like? What are we facing? What do we need to look out for? Parks and public health. One of the things they will be looking out for is a way to increase access to the preserve. The town of York has a noticeable absence of public parks, and opportunities for outdoor recreation and exercise could be enhanced in the area. The Conservancy has had conversations with the Greater Rochester Health Foundation and the Genesee Valley Health Partnership about the challenge that rural people sometimes face when it comes to maintaining an active lifestyle. Cost and transportation are both significant detriments for people. So we really see a lot of value in this. We really see the benefit that we're extending, and really the ability to say that this does serve so many people, so many interests, from the nature to public health. I think this is a model that makes absolute sense for this town, said Rigatoni. Rigatoni, Ochi, and Nagel, who also serves on the board, will have confidence in the Genesee Valley Conservancy's ability to manage the property and maintain it for future generations. We have the expertise to manage and keep the property accessible, and when everybody's gone and it's 3 generations from now, they can still access this property with the same ease. So it's a big commitment, and we're prepared to make it. For more information about contributing to the Genesee Valley Conservancy Stewardship Fund, visit www.geneseevalleyconservancy.org. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Batavia Daily News on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. And our next article is by Lynn Belusio. New Year's traditions go way back. January 1 routines range from the quaint to the bizarre. New Year's Day was declared a federal holiday in 1870 when Congress passed a bill creating 4 federal holidays: Thanksgiving, Christmas, the 4th of July, and New Year's Day. The bill was signed by President Grant. The Leroy Gazette mentioned in 1893 that the Leroy Post Office would be open 7 to 10 a.m. and 5 to 5:30 p.m. on New Year's Day. The Leroy Gazette printed an article in 1898 about some of the traditions associated with New Year's. Some of them are rather curious. On New Year's Day, it was important to go to the well or the pond with nosegay of flowers and an apple. The water will be fresh and wholesome all year. Another old custom? It was a tradition to give women pin money on New Year's Day. The money was to be used for clothing. The custom had roots in the 16th century when the poorer class could not afford expensive pins made from silver or bone. It wasn't until 1832 when John Ireland invented a machine that could make mass-produced pins that the lower class could afford pins. Other gifts that were given for New Year's include oranges studded with cloves in the 18th and early 19th centuries, when Christmas was not celebrated as it is today. Gifts were more commonly given on New Year's Day. Certainly, the story of the night before Christmas indicated that the old New Year's tradition had given way to gifts being given on Christmas. In the north of England, it was good luck to wear new clothes on the first day of the year. In Brazil, people wear colorful underwear: green for good health, yellow for financial prosperity, white for peace, red for passion, pink brings romance, and purple underwear is for intellectual and spiritual inspiration. In parts of France, it is unlucky to lend anything on New Year's Day. In the north of England, it was good luck to wear new clothes on the first day of the year, and the old year was swept out by men and boys dressed as chimney sweeps with ashes on their faces. Sweeping out the old year was a common tradition, and even today, some people open the front door wide at midnight to let the old year out and the new year in. People in Scotland still clean the house before New Year's Day. They must have a clean house to start the new year, and an untidy house is unlucky. They also sweep the chimney and the fireplace and have someone read the ashes to tell their fortune. Once the fireplace is clean, it's important to lay a new fire. Perhaps related to cleaning house in Denmark, broken plates and china are thrown out the front door. And as people walk down the street, they look for evidence that the tradition has been followed. They also jump off a piece of furniture, jumping into the new year. And in Mexico and Colombia, people walk in circles with a suitcase or around the block to guarantee a year of exciting adventures. In the 1960s, kids in the Netherlands started diving into lake canals. Some dive into the North Sea. The explanation is not clear. In the Philippines, people clang pots and pans and drive around revving their cars, honking the horns and blowing whistles to scare away evil spirits. The young kids keep jumping as high as they can when the clock strikes 12. They believe it will help them grow tall. At the temples in Japan, the huge bells will be rung 108 times on New Year's Eve, representing the 108 human sins. In Tokyo, the most popular bell is rung 107 times on December 31st, and it's rung only once immediately past midnight. Another curious tradition was mentioned in the Leroy Gazette. Among the Wends, people who live in Slovakia in northeast Germany, young maidens hasten the advent of the chosen husband by going into the hen house on New Year's Eve, striking the perch right among the hens while repeating to themselves, "If it cackles the hen, you will have a man. If it cackles the hen, then who will know when?" It's not clear what happened next. Weather on New Year's Day foretells the coming year. If the day begins with dusky red clouds, then it's denoted strife and debates among the great ones, and there will be many robberies. Actually, the weather at this time of year is supposed to foretell the weather for the next 12 months. Each day between Christmas and July 5th was a forecast of the next year's weather month by month. The weather on Christmas tells the weather in January. The weather on January 5th is the weather for the following December. January 1 was a day for men to go out and visit their neighbors. Their wives stayed home to greet visitors and to serve light refreshments. In household with servants, the men would present their calling cards at the door to a butler or servant, who would then take the card into the parlor and announce the visitor. There is a wonderful account of the men in Geneseo making the rounds of houses in the neighborhood. Young ladies would also receive possible suitors, of course, if properly chaperoned. The first person in the house brings good luck, especially if it was a dark-haired gentleman. But if the first visitor was a woman or a person with red hair, then there would be bad luck. Certain foods are associated with New Year's Day. For some reason, in parts of Germany, there are pigs made from marzipan, and the Spaniards eat 12 grapes, 1 grape each time the clock chimes. And finally, both Italians and the Germans trace tradition back to lentil soup, served after midnight on New Year's Day. The small round lentils resembled coins and are thought to bring prosperity. And next, we have an article by Dan Boltz. DMV announces new Gold Star family license plates. The New York State Department of Motor Vehicles announced a new Gold Star family license plate that allows parents, siblings, and other relatives to honor the sacrifice and service of their loved ones. This plate is available in addition to the Gold Star Mother's Plate. Both plates are accessible on the DMV website. We are deeply proud to be able to offer this plate, and we are grateful to all the family members and elected officials who work to make this day happen, said DMV Commissioner Mark Schroeder. We offer many plates that honor veterans and their service, but this is a long overdue addition that we are glad is finally here. Assemblyman Steve Hawley Batavia praised the Department of Motor Vehicles announcement, citing his long support for efforts to waive registration fees for Gold Star parents and family members who apply for commemorative plates. I'm proud to see the DMV take this important step supporting our state's Gold Star families and my legislation and providing them with another way to honor those who made the ultimate sacrifice, said Hawley. Hawley also said he plans to amend his bill to ensure DMV includes this new plate when waiving registration fees for eligible Gold Star families. One of my goals as an assemblyman has been to ensure these plates are accessible and affordable for qualifying families. This announcement marks real progress, and I look forward to continuing to work with Commissioner Schroeder and my colleagues in Albany to make sure Gold Star families will be able to obtain these plates for no registration fee. Among those who worked to see the plate come to fruition was Adam DeMarsco, who sought to honor his brother, Army Sergeant Michael DeMarsco, who was killed in Afghanistan in 2012 by an improvised explosive device. Adam previously lived in Massachusetts and had a Gold Star family plate there. When he came to New York, he wanted to get one here, but it was not yet available. DeMarco worked to change that and was presented with the first Gold Star family plate in recognition of his efforts, according to a press release from the DMV. Gold Star families carry a weight that never fully lifts, Adam DeMarco said. By establishing these license plates, New York is making a simple, powerful promise that the lives of our fallen heroes matter and that their families will always be recognized, honored, and supported. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Batavia Daily News on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. And in local news, Peoria announces First Friday's events. Business encourage residents to resolve to shop local in 2026. Perry, New York. Local business owners, the Arts Council of Wyoming County, the Perry Main Street Association, will sponsor First Friday's events in the village in 2026. The events will be from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. on the first Friday of each month and will include a variety of activities and attractions, including food, games, discounts, and music. This Friday, January 2nd, will be the first event of the year, a bingo-like game called Resolve to Shop Local in 2026. For this event, participants can pick up a game board at any of the participating Perry businesses listed below. As they visit each stop listed on the board, participants must collect proof that they went there. Once they visited at least 5 shops, they can go to Act 4 Books at 4 South Main Street to turn in the game board. Visiting 5 businesses will earn participants a candy bar. Visiting 10 businesses will mean being entered into a drawing for a $25 Give Perry certificate. Visiting 15 or more businesses will get participants entered into a drawing for a $50 Give Perry certificate. Participating businesses include Act 4 Books, the Arts Council for Wyoming County, Books and Fields, Captivated Studios, Commodore Wine and Spirits, Country Bell Farm Market, Country Kitchen, Creekside Publishing, 11 Covington, Family Furniture, Genesee Dance and Pilates, Go For It Graphics, Hearts Insurance, Jake's Barbershop, Luxury Smoke Shop, Silver Lake Brewing Project, and the Theater at 37. And next we have the opinion page, another view. Trump makes headway on smaller federal workforce. The following editorial was originally published by the Las Vegas Review-Journal. For the first time in decades, the federal bureaucracy is getting smaller. According to the latest federal jobs report, the government has shed roughly 271,000 civilian positions in the past year, putting President Donald Trump within striking distance of his stated goal to cut 300,000 federal jobs by year's end. In an era when government seems only to grow in size and ambition, this reversal is an accomplishment. As Eric Boehm of Reason points out, these cuts are a long overdue acknowledgement that the federal government had become unwieldy, inefficient, and unaccountable. The federal workforce swelled past 3 million employees in 2024, its highest level since the mid-1990s. Today's headcount brings us back to where we stood in 2015. Rolling back that bloat is no small feat, especially in the face of resistance from public sector unions and entrenched special interest. A leaner federal workforce matters because the government should not crowd out private enterprise or creating unnecessary layers of administration. When Washington grows without restraint, so do inefficiencies, delays, and wasteful spending. Reducing headcount forces agencies to rethink priorities, streamline operations, and justify the task that they choose to keep. Taxpayers deserve nothing less. Of course, as Boehm notes, cutting jobs is not a cure-all. Spending is the truest measure of government size. If agencies turn to contractors or shift employees into new programs, the benefit of President Trump reductions could evaporate. The administration should ensure that workforce downsizing is paired with genuine structural reforms, not merely reshuffling. Yet, even with those caveats, the importance of this year's progress cannot be dismissed. For decades, Washington has operated under the assumption that our government must always increase in size. More programs, staff, and oversight are inevitable, while reductions are unthinkable. Even the smallest cut elicits howls of outrage. Remember how long it took to get rid of the tea tasting board? Trump's reduction of the federal workforce represents a rare reversal of that mindset, and it deserves support. Cutting nearly 10% of federal positions in a single year is responsible stewardship of taxpayer dollars that sends a clear message. Government should serve the people, not endlessly absorb their resources. The United States thrives when innovation, opportunity, and productivity come from the private sector, not from a swelling federal payroll. Shrinking the federal workforce is a step toward restoring the balance. The government can contract when leadership is willing to challenge the status quo. The White House should stay the course, lock in these gains, and continue working toward a government that is leaner, more disciplined, and more accountable. And now we have another view. This article is from the Los Angeles Times, written by Anita Charbra and Mark Barbach. America tried something new in 2025. It's not going well. Is there a dumpster somewhere to torch and bury this year of Bedlam 2025? We near its end with equal amounts of relief and trepidation. Surely we can't be expected to endure another such tumultuous turn around the sun. It was only January that Donald Trump moved back into the White House, apparently toting truckloads of glit for the walls. Within weeks, he declared an emergency at the border, set in motion plans to dismantle government agencies, fired masses of federal workers, and tariffs. By spring, the administration was attacking Harvard as a test case for strong-arming higher education. By June, Trump's grotesquely misnamed Big Beautiful Bill had become law, giving $1 trillion in tax cuts to billionaires and funding a deportation effort, an armed force that has fundamentally reshaped American immigration law and ended any pretense about targeting the worst of the worst. Fall and winter have brought questionable bombing of boats in the Caribbean, a further backing away from Ukraine, a crackdown on opposition to Trump by classifying it as leftist terrorism, and congressional inaction on health care that will leave many struggling to stay insured. That's the short list. It was a year when America tried something new, and while adherents of the mega movement may celebrate much of it, our columnists Anita Charbra and Mark Barabak have a different perspective. Here they renew their annual tradition of looking at the year past and offering some thoughts of what the new year might bring. Charbra. I can't say 2025 was a stellar year for the American experiment, but it certainly will make the history books. Before we dive into pure politics, I'll start with something positive. I met a married couple at a No Kings rally in Sacramento who were dressed up as dinosaurs, inspired by the Portland frog, an activist who wears an inflatable amphibian suit. When I asked why, the husband told me, "If you don't do something soon, you will have democracy being extinct." I love that so many Americans were doing something by turning out to not just protest policies that hit personally, but to rally in support of democracy. For many, it was their first time taking this kind of action, and they were doing it in a way that expressed optimism and possibility rather than giving in to the anger or despair. Where there is humor, there is hope. Mark Barback. As in, it only hurts when I laugh? In 2024, a plurality of Americans voted to reinstall Trump in the White House, warts, felony convictions, and all. Mainly in the hope he would bring down the cost of living and make eggs and gasoline affordable again. While eggs and gas are no longer exorbitant, the cost of just about everything else continues to climb. Or in the case of beef, utility bills and insurance skyrocket. Meanwhile, the president seems less concerned with improving voters' lives than smearing his name on every object he lays his eyes on. One of the latest examples being the John F. Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts. The only place Trump doesn't want to see his name is in those voluminous Epson files. I wonder, why stop there? Why not brand these the United States of Trump America? Then boast we live in the hottest country on planet Trump. Anita Chhabra. Stop giving him ideas. You and I agree that it's been a difficult year full of absurdity, but we've disagreed on how seriously to take Trump as a threat to democracy. As the year closes, I am more concerned than ever. It's not the ugly antics of ego that alarm me, but the devastating policies that will be hard to undo if we get the chance to undo them. The race-based witch hunt of deportations is obviously at the top of that list. But the demolition of both K through 12 and higher education, dismantling of federal agencies, thereby cutting our scientific power as a nation, the increasing oligarchy of tech industrialists, the quiet placement of election deniers in key election posts, these are all hammers bashing away at our democracy. Now we are seeing overt anti-Semitism and racism on the mega right with alarming acceptance from many. The far right has championed a debate as dumb as it is frightening about heritage Americans being somehow a higher class of citizens than non-whites. Recently, Vice President J.D. Vance gave a speech in which he announced, in the United States of America, you don't have to apologize for being white anymore. And Trump has said he wants to start taking away citizenships from illegal immigrants. Both men claim America is a Christian nation and eschew diversity as a value. Do you still think American democracy is secure and that political moment will pass without lasting damage to our democratic norms? Mark. I'll start with some differentiation. I agree that Trump is sowing seeds, or more specifically, enacting policies and programs that will generate and do damage for many years to come. Alienating our allies, terrorizing communities with his prejudicial anti-immigrant policies will go far beyond the reasonable tightening of border security. Starving science and other research programs, the list is a long and depressing one, as you suggest. But I do believe, cue the trumpets and cherubs, there is nothing beyond the power of voters to fix. To quote, me, there is no organism on the planet more sensitive to heat and light than a politician. We've already seen an anti-Trump backlash in a series of elections held this year, in red and blue states alike. A strong repudiation in the 2026 midterm elections will do more than all the electoral tut-tutting and protest marches combined. Not that either are bad things. The best way to preserve our democracy and uphold America's values is for unhappy citizens to register their dissent via the ballot box and to address at least one of your concerns. I'm not too worried about Trump somehow nullifying the results, given legal checks and the decentralization of our election system. Installing lawmakers in Congress with a mandate to hold Trump to account would be a good start toward repairing at least some of the damage he's wrought. And if it turns into a Republican route, it'll be quite something to watch the president's one-time allies run for the hills as fast as their weak knees will allow. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Batavia Daily News on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. And in local news, we have 2 death announcements. First, Doris Beauchart, 99, passed away peacefully on Christmas Day, Thursday, December 25th, 2025. At Premier Genesee, Batavia, New York. Also, Constance Connie Babcock, 99, of Batavia, passed away on December 27, 2025, at United Memorial Medical Center. And next, under the headline of Health and Family, we have an article by Kayla Yupp. When should kids get a smartphone? Study links owning one before age 12 to health risks. Philadelphia. This is from the Philadelphia Inquirer. Rand Barzila, a psychiatrist and researcher at Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, won't be letting his 9-year-old son get a smartphone before age 13. He made the decision based on data from his recent study published in the medical journal Pediatrics, which linked getting a smartphone at a young age to worse health consequences. Kids who owned a smartphone by age 12 had a greater risk of depression, obesity, and insufficient sleep compared to those who didn't, a research team led by Brazile found. That was based on observational data collected between 2016 and 2022 in an ongoing study of more than 10,000 children across the United States. Designed to access brain development and child health, the nationwide Adolescent Brain Cognitive Development Study has been following children from the last decade, starting from age 9 to 10 into early adulthood. The age at which kids get a phone in this cohort ranged from 4 to 13, with a median age of 11. We're not advocating for people to go back to the Stone Age. We know that eventually almost every teen will get their smartphone, said Barsley, the study's lead author. Smartphone ownership is high among U.S. children and teens. Nearly 60% of parents of an 11 or 12-year-old said their child owned one in a 2025 Pew Research Center survey. By comparison, 29% of kids age 8 to 10 and 12% of age 5 to 7-year-olds had smartphones. Concern about the impact of mobile devices comes at rates of depression, suicidal thoughts, and anxiety have been rising among U.S. youth over the last decade. Though screens are unlikely to be the only factor, many studies have linked excessive use to worse mental health. That's not to say that smartphones don't have benefits. The devices can help youth stay connected with people and address safety concerns parents may have. We're not saying smartphones are bad, but we're not saying they're good, Barsley said. To him, the takeaway is that parents should consider how giving a child a smartphone could impact their kids' health. Make sure that it doesn't consume all of their life, he said. What the data says. Barsley's team first compared the health outcomes of children in the study who owned a smartphone by age 12 to those who didn't. Those who had the device had a 31% greater risk of depression, a 40% greater risk of obesity, and a 62% greater risk of insufficient sleep, which in this case meant getting less than 9 hours of sleep. They next found that there was a roughly 10% increase in the odds of obesity and insufficient sleep at age 12 for each year younger than 12 that the child received a smartphone. Earlier age of ownership, however, was not associated with a higher risk of depression. A limitation of the study is that the research did not have data on what children were doing on their smartphones. They could not account for whether the child was exposed to adverse content on their device or what they tended to use it for. His team's last analysis zeroed in on the children who did not already have a smartphone at age 12. A year later, at age 13, roughly half of the kids in that group had received one. That came with a higher risk of having mental health problems and insufficient sleep compared to the half who had not received a smartphone. His team controlled for factors such as income, parental education level, puberty, parental monitoring, and whether the kids had tablets, laptops, or a smartwatch, which might also affect their outcomes. However, other factors not captured by the research, which relied on observational data, still may have contributed to the outcomes identified. What parents can do. It's important to keep in mind that these findings speak to broad trends seen in the population and wouldn't predict a specific child's outcome. We need to remember that this is an average, he said. It doesn't say anything for the individual child. His oldest two children, who are now in high school, received their first phones before age 12. If parents give their child a smartphone, they should check in regularly to see how it impacts the child's lifestyle. Screen time shouldn't come at the expense of sleep, physical activity, or quality time with friends and family. Brazel also suggested having the child keep their smartphone out of their bedroom at night and having tech-free family time, such as during dinner. Ultimately, he would encourage parents to make an informed decision on smartphone ownership for their child based on the evidence out there on the harms and benefits. Things that can help families delay the use of phones will probably make sense, he said. And next, under the subject of health and family, an article from Metro Creative Connection. New Year, New You, How to Celebrate Sober This New Year's Eve. Revelry and the New Year's Eve tend to go hand in hand. When the world-renowned ball drops in Times Square at the stroke of midnight on New Year's Eve, many a celebrant toasts the arrival of a new year with a glass of champagne, a tradition that underscores the role of alcohol plays on the final day of the year. Though alcohol is readily available on New Year's Eve, there are still plenty of ways for individuals to celebrate sober. This New Year's Eve, individuals looking to avoid alcohol can consider these fun ways to ring in the new year. Make it a marathon until midnight. Time zones feature prominently on New Year's Eve, but the excitement sci-fi fans feel come New Year's Eve has everything to do with the more unique zone, the Twilight Zone. Is a beloved fantasy, science fiction, horror, anthology television series that ran for 5 seasons between 1959 and 1964. In years past, the Sci-Fi Channel in the United States has run a Twilight Zone marathon each New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. Fans of the classic show can cuddle up and watch all the classic episodes. Viewers who don't necessarily want to watch the Twilight Zone can take inspiration from the Sci-Fi Channel and create their own theme movie or television show marathon and invite like-minded friends over for a fun night. Host a sober party. Parties are popular on New Year's Eve, and there's nothing stopping sober celebrants from getting in on the fun. Host a party at home and let guests know the party will be a sober affair. Prepare or cater a sit-down dinner for guests who will have plenty of time before midnight to engage in conversation with their host and fellow celebrants. Arrange for games to be played throughout the night after dinner, and be sure to have a television showing a broadcast of the coverage from Times Square or another notable locale where people gather to ring in the new year. Travel overseas. If you typically spend New Year's Eve in your home country, consider an overseas trip to take in how people in another part of the world usher in the new year. There's no shortage of locales with memorable celebrations. Some spots to consider include Sydney, Australia, which hosts a breathtaking fireworks show each New Year's Eve, and Edinburgh, Scotland, where a 3-day festival culminates with a fireworks display near Edinburgh Castle. Take in some entertainment. Many concert venues are booked on New Year's Eve with a mix of new and old musical acts take to the stage and typically play until the clock strikes 12, if not beyond. These shows tend to be memorable affairs and make for an ideal way to ring in the new year without alcohol. Alcohol may seem like a must-have on New Year's Eve, but individuals aspiring to stay sober this December 31 have many options to celebrate without having a drink. And next, on the subject of sports, Ransomville Speedway to introduce Ring of Honor wall beginning in 2026. This article is by Steve Petty. Ransomville Speedway is proud to announce the creation of a Ring of Honor wall set to debut during the 2026 racing season. The new edition will celebrate and preserve the rich history of the Speedway by honoring individuals who have made a lasting impact on Ransomville Speedway. The Ring of Honor wall will recognize drivers, owners, crew members, officials, media members, and other contributors whose dedication, achievements, and passion helped shape the legacy of Ransomville Speedway. That was said by Tanya Robinson, General Manager of the Speedway. Inductions will become a special part of the race season, allowing fans, competitors, and families to celebrate those who built and sustained the tradition of racing at the Big R, Robinson continued. Induction ceremonies will take place on select dates throughout the season, with induction dates listed directly on the Ransomville Speedway schedule. To build anticipation and recognition, inductees will be announced 1 to 2 weeks prior to their official induction date. The Ring of Honor wall will serve as a permanent tribute to the people who helped make Ransomville Speedway what it is today. And this is our way of saying thank you and ensuring their contributions are never forgotten, Robinson said. Look for the 2026 schedule to be released in the new year. For more information, follow us on social media and head to our website, ransomvillespeedway.com. And finally, we have Dear Abby. Woman finds support from an artificial source. Dear Abby, I'm a 50-year-old woman who has lived with orthopedic challenges due to a congenital metabolic condition. Despite many surgeries and limited mobility, I have led a full life as a special needs teacher, wife, and caregiver for my grandmother. After my grandmother passed last year, I struggled emotionally and started weekly Zoom sessions with a therapist. It helped at first, but it eventually felt stale and unfulfilling. When a friend recommended another therapist, I was surprised to learn that Charlie was actually an AI chat GPT. Charlie has given me empathy and support, and I haven't felt in a long time. It worked and helped me to cope and heal. My human therapist knows about it and isn't threatened. In fact, our relationship is improving. What do you think about this, Abby? Grateful and Strong in New Jersey. Dear Grateful and Strong, it is interesting that you would ask Flesh and Blood me that question. I'm pleased that interacting with your AI therapist has been helpful for you. This is technology that's still very new, although fortunes have been invested in it. However, if I needed to help with my emotions, I personally would prefer to interact with a licensed human being rather than artificial intelligence. You've been listening to a reading of articles and features from the December 31st issue of the Batavia Daily News. Your reader has been Margaret Mack. Thank you for listening.
Coming up next in the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, we have the East Aurora Advertiser. At 11 o'clock, we have the Niagara Gazette. And at noon, we have the Dunkirk Observer. Stay with us for these readings and more throughout the day. Radio Reading mails out a large print program schedule to our listeners every other month. If you have not received a Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service large print program schedule in the mail, please call us at 716-821-5555. We will make sure that you receive one every other month. A Braille version of the schedule is also available upon request. Our number again is 716-821-5555. The following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision,